Welcome back to another edition of the Knight Report podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again is my co-host, Richie O'Leary, and part-time co-host, Alec Krauthamel. We have our answer. We figured things would come together after the announcement of Zach Sparber yesterday, and like a beaten dog, we probably should have seen this coming. But Robb Smith was hired as the other co-DC, who will be the play caller. We'll get into the hiring, our thoughts, and everything else around this. Strap in, because this is going to be a cathartic podcast for a lot of people, I'm sure. But before we get into that, this podcast is once again presented to you by Knight and Day Apparel. Hey, Rutgers fans, get ready to slam dunk your style with Knight and Day Apparel. Cheer on your Scarlet Knights this basketball season in our exclusive Rutgers gear. From trend-setting designs to lifestyle garments, we've got you covered with everything you need to support your team in comfort and flair. Stand out in the crowd and show your passion for Rutgers basketball with designs that celebrate every dribble, dunk, and victory. Use our promo code RutgersRivals to get 10% off your purchase. Don't wait. Head to Knight and Day Apparel today and gear up for game day. Go Knights. We are also presented to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. The biggest betting weekend of the year is finally here, which means more updated odds and props for Super Sunday. We have hundreds of props, MVP odds, and exclusive live in-game betting. BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. Whether you're a seasoned bettor or a first-time bettor, BetOnline provides you with everything you need to enhance your game day experience. Visit the website today and make game time decisions count a little bit more. BetOnline, the game starts here.
You forgot to fix it, didn't you?
I did. I swear the copy they give us always has like stuff that doesn't make any sense, and normally I correct it. I didn't.
I'm just messing with you.
Shocker. Rutgers rehired Robb Smith for the third time as defensive coordinator. This will be his fourth stint working with Greg Schiano. This is a common theme of us thinking Greg will be looking into new names for coordinator roles and constantly being reminded, nope, he will not be. It was a long journey to get to Robb Smith, who has spent the last 2 years as an analyst at Penn State. He was unceremoniously, I wouldn't say he was fired after the 2021 season, but he was not retained, and he was allowed to go find another job. He was the defensive coordinator for the Duke Blue Devils in 2022, and he was there for 1 year under Mike Elko. Mike Elko did not retain him in 2023 prior to leaving for Texas A&M, and he's been with Penn State ever since as an analyst. I've got a lot to say about this hire. But Richie, you, again, uniquely qualified. He's been at Penn State the last 2 years. What is the general consensus from people you've spoken to about this hire since it was announced about 2 hours ago?
Between other sites that I've talked to, that he's like I talked to obviously the Arkansas site, the Minnesota site, people at the Penn State site. I got a lot of laughing emojis sent to me today.
Let's do a quick rewind, because he has been a defensive coordinator several times. So he was the defensive coordinator for Rutgers in 2012. He was the defensive coordinator at Arkansas from 2014 to 2016. He was the defensive coordinator at Minnesota from 2017 to 2018. He was the defensive coordinator at Rutgers from 2020 to 2021, and then the defensive coordinator at Duke in 2022. Sorry to cut you off. He's been a defensive coordinator for 9 years at different stops.
So he was Schiano's special teams coach from 2009 to 2011, and it was a damn good special teams unit. Don't get me wrong. He's very good at that. I give him credit there. Schiano never hired him as DC, and that's kind of like alarming to me. And then all of a sudden, 2012, Schiano leaves, takes almost everyone from the program with him. Like, you can go anywhere within the program on that. Like, even I think the only couple people that stayed were, like, obviously Kyle Flood, head coach. Robb Smith became the DC under Kyle Flood, and I think there's a couple, like, director of football performance, director of football this and that, operations and all that ended up staying too. But everyone else ended up leaving after 1 year as DC. And I guess you can consider it an upgrade back then. I don't know if you can consider linebackers coach of an NFL team upgrade from Rutgers DC now? Back then, I think you could, because it was still the American Conference. It still wasn't like high major football. It was high major football. It wasn't Power 2 football or whatever you want to call it. It's not Big Ten football. So back then it was an upgrade. So whatever. Goes to Arkansas, gets fired. Goes to Minnesota. I'm sorry. Goes to Arkansas, resigns. Was supposed to get hired as Wake Forest DC, which is a downgrade, which tells me they're probably going to let him go regardless. It sounds like Bielema's blowing up that defensive staff. That staff had a really good year 1 at Arkansas, regressed year 2, returned 9 starters from year 2, and regressed even more year 3. Gets let go, we'll say. Goes to Minnesota, gets fired after 2.5 seasons. Straight up fired. Joe Rossi takes over for him. Ends up having a phenomenal couple games.
After 1.5 seasons, in his second year,
sorry.
He got fired on November 4th after allowing 55 points to an Illinois team. They were allowing 44 points per game in the Big Ten schedule that year before he got fired. The last 4 games of the season under Joe Rossi, they allowed 14.7 points per game over those final 4 games. And that one of those was against ranked Northwestern. So just to give you an idea of how bad they were playing before he got let go.
So let's keep moving on, right? So he does that 1.5 years at Minnesota, goes to Texas A&M, connects with Elko, makes some relationships with them as an analyst. Comes back to Rutgers as DC when Schiano gets hired. Has a pretty crappy year 1, as you could tell. Year 2 was definitely a little bit better, but there's a reason that he wasn't retained. Rutgers didn't renew his contract, let him go find another job, goes to Duke for a year, and gets not retained again. But in this situation, it was very interesting. The wording at that point was he was leaving to be closer to his family in Minnesota where they were living at the time. But then 2 months later, he doesn't care about his family and moves to Pennsylvania. I don't know about that one. Let's make this one make sense. So goes to Penn State for 2 years, and here we are. I'm not happy about this. 2 months later, you're on option what? R. And we'll go R for Robb Smith because it's just, I don't know. It's such a lackluster hire. I've had so many people like yesterday texting me like, oh, it's nice to see Greg going out of his coaching tree. And these are high major coaches, Power 5 coaches, assistants that are texting me like, oh, wow, Greg went outside his coaching tree. That guy's actually pretty good. Like, he's a good recruiter. He knows people. He knows families. He knows coaches. He knows players, et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, okay. He probably won't be the play caller. They'll probably hire someone else. So we'll see who it is. And lo and behold, it's the same guy Greg let go of 4 years ago. 4 years ago. So It's just what the fuck moment.
I mean, Alec, I want to get your take on this. I have it was supposed to be a monologue, and it kind of grew into like a short story that I'm going to read that was inspired by this hire. We'll get into that in a minute. But Alec, what is your general take on about this hire in general?
Yeah, it obviously does not seem the most inspired. I definitely think the timing is making us feel not great about it. Like if they had, let's say, so Joe Harrison takes the UMass job on December 4th. Let's say December 12th or whatever, Robb Smith is hired. It's still probably not inspiring, but it's not, we aren't thinking about all these different targets and seeing them kind of go in their different directions. And then eventually this is what it seems like a fallback option. This is obviously someone that Greg trusts, which, I mean, is not surprising that this is the direction it went. But, I mean, you're pairing him with Sparber. I feel like the co-defensive coordinator, I feel like it's like this for a lot of co-defensive coordinator spots where it's, the play caller, obviously that'll be Smith. And then it feels like the other co-defensive coordinator, which will be Sparber in this instance, is mostly just like a title thing. Maybe it's like a 1 or 2 year deal, and Sparber kind of learns the ropes of being like a Power 5 coordinator and all that under Smith and Schiano. It seems like that might be where this is headed, where Sparber eventually takes over as the defensive coordinator. But I guess it's a low ceiling option is what I'll say. And I'm not sure. It's not it's not like a super high floor, but it's not a terribly low floor either, like someone without Power 5 coordinating experience or any coordinating experience. But it's definitely not, it's definitely not the most exciting. And like you guys have been saying, that it is a bit concerning, the way things have gone. It seems like he's always had a solid year 1 in his defenses that he's coordinated, and then year 2 things kind of fall off a cliff. So maybe this is only a 1 year or 2 year thing. So it's it's a tad concerning. I guess the good thing is that there's much more talent on this defense than there was last time he was defensive coordinator in years 1 and 2 of Shiano 2.0. So I guess it has that going for it. It's I don't want to say it's an anticlimactic end, but it feels like this is like Mike has said a lot. This is like the one that we all should have known that was coming. It was right under our noses this whole time. Like we always kind of hinted at Robb Smith, like guys with ties to him, like Sparber, guys with ties to like that kind of I guess circle that Shiano has. I don't think we ever actually like put it on him as being the potential hire, but probably should have known all along.
Yeah, it was right there in front of us the entire time. Like we'd mentioned him working with Lyle Hemphill when he was at Duke. We mentioned him with Matt Guerrieri because Matt Guerrieri replaced or he preceded Robb Smith. We mentioned him yesterday talking about Sparber, like why we didn't think, oh, this is probably going to be the guy. This makes too much sense. Like this is the proverbial last girl at the bar and the bar's closing down, which is kind of where my short story is going. But
I read it. It's quite a lot.
Yeah, I'll just read that now, and you guys can enjoy it, not enjoy it, whatever. I don't care. Here goes. Last call was 45 minutes ago. Don't Stop Believing has ended, and closing time is on repeat from the blown out speakers at the bar. The lights are on, and the bartender has asked you now for the third time to leave. The same girl you swore you would never talk to again and took home last winter when your life was at rock bottom is sitting next to you, asking you if you're ready to leave. She almost ruined your life last year, but that memory is far enough in the rear view to ignore at the moment. You take one last long look in the mirror behind the bar and swig the remainder of your now room temperature Coors Light down. You blink hard, steadying yourself as you slowly rise from the bar stool. You look down towards her without looking at her directly, and you mutter, "Let's go." You stumble out of the bar, arm in arm with the mistake you said you'd never make again. You haven't changed, and deep down you already knew that. But one day you tell yourself you'll do better, but not today. Desperation is calling, and it's a call you never let go to voicemail. You tell yourself you will tomorrow, but you know it's another lie. So that's where we're at.
Fucking crying.
That's where my mind went after this hire was announced. Because
I can't
believe they're doing this again.
Mm-hmm.
Cannot believe it. And for like a defense that has all the talent that we talked about that has been brought in, for the stability of this coaching staff that Greg Schiano has put together, like Greg's not going anywhere. Like he's got that job basically as long as he wants it. He's shown that he gets guys elevated in their careers. Like you saw Heatherman, he's now one of the highest paid defense coordinators. Joe Harris-Simiak is now the head coach at UMass. PJ Flex had a long, successful career after coaching under Greg, and there's more. Like Chris Hewitt, we talked about, is risen through the ranks after coaching for Greg in the NFL. There's a lot of other examples of this, but Jeff Hafley, head coach at Boston College, now defensive coordinator with the Packers. Like guys have had successful trajectories, especially as defensive coaches. Campanelli, coached under Greg, now the defensive coordinator for the Jaguars. Long history of this.
Mm-hmm.
So you think that's an attractive looking job. And the ultimate factor, which we all know is the ultimate factor, money. Greg Schiano has the money to pay coordinators. I think Kirk Soraka is a top 10 paid assistant in college football now. And Joe Harris-Simiak was scheduled to make $1.5 million in 2026. He was the top 25 paid assistant in college football. So you have all those factors, and you still, and it's got to be one of two things. Maybe it's a combination of both. One, Greg's reputation is so toxic in the coaching community that nobody wants to work under him that has options. And two, does Greg just not have enough outward trust towards guys that he doesn't want to put that trust in somebody he doesn't really know? That's probably it. That's probably what I'm leaning towards, because we talked about the guys he's interviewed and talked to this offseason, and they're all guys who he's previously worked under, which is, makes him hiring Joe Harris-Simiak a few years ago all the more surprising that he was willing to entrust a guy he'd never had work under him with his defense. And look how it turned out. It is arguably his best coordinator hire he's ever made. So I'm just so befuddled that 2 months later, we're hiring the guy that you gave walking papers 3 years ago.
Yeah, no, that's pretty accurate. The good news is he's pretty good in year one, so maybe you keep him for a year and just see you again.
I want everybody to right now, as they're listening, open their phone and look through your messages. So do a search
here we go.
in your phone under your messages for Robb Smith. And if you haven't deleted texts, you should have conversations with your friends from a few years ago when Robb Smith got fired. I want you to let those messages soak in. Let the feeling that you had when he got fired a few years ago be reminded to you right now, because I was elated. I think a few people I was talking to were just talking about how only goes up from here kind of type messages. And obviously the talent was not at what it is right now from a few years ago, but collectively we were all thrilled to see him depart. Now, maybe this is a steadying hand that Greg sees for a year or maybe 2 until the job opens back up. But this just feels like the most desperate hire that Rutgers has made in a long time.
There's some good ones in this one.
I don't know about you, Richie. I didn't find any, mostly because back then I wasn't as closely entrenched. Well, no, that's not true. I wasn't talking with the same people about Rutgers football, so not exactly I didn't find anything. I only had messages from this morning, but looking through, it's like I did search and I saw ones where it's like, all right, this guy coached with Robb Smith, and we were looking at some of the potential candidates. This guy coached with Robb Smith in this year, this spot, but it never circled back to him. Archie, I'm sure you found some interesting ones.
A former writer of ours was on BTN's Sirius XM radio station, and he said, I was given some topics to talk about Rutgers, and this is the offseason, mind you, and he said, all of a sudden they asked me why they made the change from Robb Smith, and I'm like, where do you want to start and how much time do you have? Another one says, thank fucking God I'd promote anyone in this staff over him, including Bob Frazier's old ass. There's oh my God, how did he get the Duke job? Robb Smith should have been fired yesterday. A lot of Robb Smith should have been fired yesterday type things throughout that 2021 season. And oh man, I hate to kick a guy when he's down, but I guess he's not down because he's probably gonna get a nice old payday. He's
he's very much up after getting hired as the defensive coordinator. And if we're going to talk positives, let's talk positives. He's been a coordinator at several different stops. He's got 9 years of coordinator experience, so that's a positive. Greg clearly trusts him to hire him back now for the 4th time. He knows what Greg wants in terms of calling a defense. It doesn't necessarily mean that's what we'll get, but he knows what he wants. Mm-hmm. The list kind of tails off for me after that point.
He technically made the 2020 defense better in 2021, but it's not saying much considering 2020 you really couldn't do anything because of COVID. So I don't know how much you really want to credit him there. He only gave up 398 yards per game. It was 450 the year before with him. I mean,
that's a good point.
But his sack rate went from 6.9 to 4.9. It's like when he was teaching guys how to pressure the quarterback, it didn't work.
Yeah, that's the most concerning thing is his sack rates are consistently pretty low in his time calling defenses.
He worked since leaving Rutgers, worked under Mike Elko, Manny Diaz, and Tom Allen. I guess we could say that's a positive, but they're all totally different fucking defenses because Manny Diaz, pressure versus Tom Allen, bend don't break versus Mike Elko is just a fucking dog. I know you said before, but I can't believe he's still in his 40s. It's crazy. But
believe it or not, Robb Smith's still in his 40s too. He's only 49.
Really?
Oh, he looks rough for 49. I'm sorry, but
coaching is a tough profession. I mean, I remember my dad and I used to talk about before he stepped down from Ohio State. Thad Matta was like 53, and he looked like he was 70.
Yeah,
you guys have seen Jim Knowles recently. He's not even 60 yet. And I'm like, look at him. I'm like, holy shit, dude, you look like
Coaching
you're like
does that
72.
too, man. Yeah.
But
Yeah,
positives. I don't.
I noticed that some of the positive quickly turned back into, well, then this
Negative.
didn't go so well. And yeah, I guess the thing that I'm banking on is like you said, Mike. It's he knows Shiano's system and what he wants and what he expects, and he's called plays at the power 4 level for a lot of years, and the talent level on this defense is much higher than even honestly the last couple of years, I would say. So yeah,
I got a positive.
okay,
Go for it.
We're gonna get more block kicks now because for some reason he knows what the fuck he's doing there.
I mean, I saw in his 3-year tenure as special teams coordinator, they had like 31 block kicks, which is an absolutely insane number.
Yeah, which I mean
That's
that
like
was
that's close to like 1 or like 0.9 a game, which is absolutely insane.
I just don't know how you kind of sell this to people. Like, and I know Thamel's like pushing the narrative, like former Duke DC, former Minnesota DC, former Arkansas DC, but you look at the numbers again and it's like shit.
Also,
like,
there's a reason former is a big word there.
Also, when did we stop using the word fired? Just start saying you're fired at the end of the day. Like, not retained, didn't have contract renewed, left because of family, but also didn't go back to the family in Minnesota, said, I'm going over here instead. Like, just like you're fired.
It reminds me when the reports of Chris Ash going to Notre Dame came out. It was like he coordinated the national championship Ohio State defense. He was pretty good at Wisconsin, which obviously he deserves a lot of credit for. And then at the bottom, it's like, oh, he also coached at Rutgers. That happened.
Yeah, don't mention that one. Now, actually, you know what? I'm glad you said that because I had a notable coach talk to me the other day. This was about the Rutgers DC thing. And he's very familiar with the Rutgers program, very familiar with how it works. Told me he was expecting Tem Lukabu originally once they struck out with who they struck out with? Heatherman and Rossi. He heard Tem Lukabu as a name. Obviously didn't happen. He said he was talking to a high school coach that mentioned Chris Ash as a potential DC for Rutgers. And I was just like, get the fuck out of here. Number one.
Like the
I'll
coach
prevent that one
speculating
from happening. Yeah, like speculating. He's like, I heard Chris Ash actually like had some interest in the job and was kind of looking to it. And I was like, what the fuck? Number one,
What the hell?
no. Number two, I'm not going to let that. I'll personally strike up a vendetta against that guy and somehow make
like
that not work.
If Greg Schiano hired Chris Ash, that would be like the funniest possible way for that search to end.
It's just insane. Like
that's crazy.
It's like that guy will never be allowed back in the building, but Hobbs is gone, so maybe he would be allowed back in the building. But either way, anyway, off track. But
I'm just bummed. I'm disappointed. Maybe we do this to ourselves, expecting these flashy names with juice, guys that other programs want. Like that's just not Schiano's MO. And maybe we just have to like accept that. Maybe we just have to accept set our expectations low for the hires he makes from the coordinator roles. He has a very set thing he's looking for. He wants to have experience. He wants to have guys he knows he can trust. And I think this is another lesson we have to learn when we're making these coaching hot boards. Like if it doesn't include guys he's worked with or, had coordinate for him in the past, it's probably not going to happen. And you can't spin this in a way that this was, even close to the top of the priority list.
No shot.
Like you would have hired him a long time ago if that was the case.
Yeah, like I said, they would have hired him like a week and a half afterwards. Let's say, they go after Heather and he signs his extension. Okay, let's pivot to Robb Smith, not, go all the way into February and then hire him.
It's just so disappointing seeing your own conference mates making move after move. Washington hires Ryan Walters. Clemson hires Penn State. No, obviously not conference mate, but Clemson hired Penn State's Tom Allen. Penn State goes and says, fuck it, we're going to go hire Jim Knowles from Ohio State. Rob Ryan is an assistant coach at USC now. Like Virginia Tech even, I know, and again, not a conference mate, goes out and gets a linebackers coach from the NFL to be their DC. Notre Dame hires Chris Ash. Like,
although, to be fair, their fan base isn't very happy with that one either.
Notre Dame?
Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech? I don't think he's a bad coach, but I don't know a lot about him. So.
And then I did notice that a lot of Notre Dame fans weren't very happy because they looked up Chris Ash on Wikipedia and saw his head coaching record. But I think some have come around since.
He'll be okay there, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, Virginia Tech struck out with a bunch of names too, but I'd rather an NFL assistant coach, to be honest, than a retread. Just feel like he's so afraid of going outside his tree, it sounds like. And it's like you mentioned before, part of it might be the fact that he's hard to work for. He's not easy to work for, especially on the defensive side of the ball. It's a lot easier to work on the offensive side where you can be like, okay, I might know a lot more offense than you, versus defense where it's Greg's way or the highway.
Well, I mean, also, Greg's give him a lot of credit. He's a very high level mind defensively. So if you can't match that as a coordinator, especially,
Luka just would have made so much sense.
If you're not super thick skinned, I'm sure that working under Greg is not easy.
Yeah. Now, go on.
Was there a chance that Luka, just kind of similar to Campanile, didn't want to return to the college game? Because we see that a lot where guys just don't really want to have that same grind, where it's still a grind in the NFL, but it's a different kind of grind.
I mean, he got a promotion technically. He went from outside linebackers coach at the worst team in the NFL to linebackers coach of the 5th worst team in the NFL.
I do think there's something there, Alec. I think college coaching has gotten more chaotic recently. Every year there's a massive change in either, how the rules are interpreted, or now guys are getting paid, now guys can leave whenever they want. All these things have happened in the last 5 years. So I imagine it's tougher to be a coach in college now more than ever. And at the same time, the hours are a lot more grueling. In the NFL, game weeks, those are rough. Training camp, those are rough. But you have a legit work-life balance. You can go on vacation in the off season. Mm-hmm. You can unplug. In college, you can't really do that. And so if the money's comparable, I would imagine that guys are trying to stay in the NFL now more than ever. And you have to have a serious step up in order to keep a guy, or to lure an NFL guy away. I think, what was Matt Rule when he got hired by Temple? I know this is a long time ago. He was the assistant offensive line coach with the Giants before he got hired as a Temple head coach.
Assistant QB's coach.
Something like that, yeah. So assistant QB's. Those are the kind of leaps that you're going to have to see, an assistant position coach getting a defensive, a coordinator role in the NFL, in college.
Yeah, we've seen it the last couple of years. Obviously, Chip Kelly leaves UCLA for the Ohio State offensive coordinator job, and then he goes to Las Vegas to join Pete Carroll's staff.
Oh, you're right.
We see it all the time. We're seeing Group of Five as head coaches become power, or FCS even head coaches, which makes a little bit more sense to jump, but becoming Power 5 assistants. I think Georgia Southern's or Georgia State's coach last year left to join, I forget which staff it was, but as an offensive assistant or something. So I think we're going to keep seeing things like that happen because, like you mentioned, especially with the new rules and how everything's changing, a college football head coach, it is however many hours are in a week, that's how many hours you spend on the job.
Yeah, yep.
There's just so many Go on, sorry.
I think that guy was, he joined South Carolina's staff as the tight ends coach, if I remember.
Yeah, Sean Elliott, I think was his name.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There's just over the past, maybe not this offseason as much, but last offseason, you guys remember there's just all these G5 head coaches going for coordinator spots in the P5, especially the Big Ten and SEC. It's just mind blowing that they weren't able to land one. And now, if Robb Smith is making anywhere near what Joe Harris-Simiak made last year, I'd be severely disappointed, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
I feel like if I had to guess, I feel like he would probably make around $700K, and then Sparber $400 or $500. This is just me purely spitballing. Probably in that range.
Can't justify Sparber $500, man.
Yeah, Hemphill
$400
as the defense coordinator for JMU last year was making $200. So I can't imagine he's making $4 or $5.
He's probably making $75, $100 as the linebackers coach.
Yeah, probably around 100 if I had to guess.
So maybe 3 or 4 then.
Let's see. He made $700,000, or Robb Smith made $700,000 when he was DC back in 2021. I think you just say that same rate, probably, maybe a little less, if anything. And then Colin Farrell's making $300. I'm probably just giving Sparber $300. He can have the co-DC title. That's just so just to say, hey, it's just a title at the end of the day. Like
Yeah.
people are speculating he's DC in waiting. I don't think that's necessarily the case either. Could he be down the line? Maybe, but I don't think that's anywhere near the case. Like I'm still probably picking Orphe if I had to pick someone in-house over everyone.
Yep. I don't know. I guess we just have to like put the ultimate faith in Schiano here that the defense will, with better talent, just perform better. Just hope the injury variance doesn't hit us as hard as it did last year, and that things work out. Yeah, you love when the the resounding message is, let's just hope it works, not like, oh, this is going to probably work. I don't know. I'm just bummed. Recruiting's going awesome. But ultimately, I trust the direction things are going. It's just clear that like things didn't work out as they probably hoped it would in this search. And let's hope that an experienced guy like Robb Smith can continue the upward trajectory of this program overall. Obviously, last year on defense, things did not go anywhere near as well as we would hope, but the 23 defense was phenomenal. Like, let's just hope we pick up where things left off there.
We're just on quite the run of negativity.
I swear we're not trying to be.
Like,
It's just
so bad. Like, what's going on right now?
this is. I think we just thought this was a more desirable job than it ended up being, and maybe it is. Maybe this is just we ended up here because this is the kind of person that Schiano wanted, was somebody that he had worked with before and knew he could trust, knew the kind of things he wanted out of his defense, and that was leading the charge first and foremost.
Yeah. Well, year one, Robb Smith. Good news. Pretty decent.
Yeah.
See if it makes it to year two.
You guys got anything else you wanted to touch on?
I mean, I feel like we touched on a lot of stuff yesterday, not anticipating we'd have to do this again today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Brian Fonseca posted Norfolk State has another game in 2028 against Rutgers. Will Mike Vick be there still? I'm going to say
Probably not.
no, probably. But
Probably not.
I would have liked to see Delaware State on the schedule and get some Deshaun Jackson in there. That'd be pretty cool. Kent State's the only other team on the schedule for 2028. Actually, that schedule is lining up to be. Actually, it's similar to this year. It's not good. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got.
Let's see. I mean, just looking at the 2028 Big Ten opponents.
Yeah.
The home opponents are Illinois, Minnesota, Penn State, Purdue, UCLA. The away ones are Iowa, Maryland, Ohio State, and Oregon.
That's a fucking slate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's still 3 years away, so, I mean, you never know. Purdue could be a complete powerhouse, or they could have flamed out under Barry Odom. PJ Fleck could have left by now from Minnesota. Who knows? That 2028 is still a ways away. But, of course, Ohio State and Oregon are still probably going to be very good.
We didn't mention our giveaway yesterday. We should mention that again.
I think we did
at the end. Yeah.
Oh, I wasn't here. Never mind. I take it back.
Yeah.
I lied.
But yes, that is a good point. We are still doing our 400th episode celebration giveaway. So if you'd like to be involved, which many of you have already, so thank you to everyone who has already entered. But the most preferred way for you to enter would be to go onto your Apple Podcast app, give us a 5-star review, and reference somewhere in the review the number 400. Could be talking about 400 episodes or wherever you want. Just mention 400. The other way, that'll get you 2 entries. The other way to enter would be in this video below. Leave a comment referencing the number 400, and you'll get an entry into the giveaway. We're giving away 2 prize packages that will be raffled off at the end of the month. But wanted to thank everybody who's been a loyal listener, everybody who's liked, subscribed, told a friend, all of the above to really help the channel grow. And we appreciate each and every one of you. But that is all we've got. Hate to be super doom and gloomy, but this is, I feel like, warranted it. So we'll see how things go.
At this point, like I feel like it's just depressed.
It might be a little early for that, but
I mean, it's just like a post funeral, basically.
Yeah, it is 5 o'clock somewhere.
Let's go tell stories about the good old days in 06, 07.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks once again for listening. For me and Richie and Alec, this has been another edition of the Knight Report podcast. Signing off.